Welcome to Forgotten Video Store, the podcast where we go to the rental store of the same name in North Hollywood and pick out one of their unique movies that you can't find anywhere else on the planet. I'm your host, David Murto, aka Daddy Big Cup. And my guest this time is a Welsh comedian, that can't be right, living and working in the Netherlands. I'm not supposed to have any comedians on the show anymore. This is a serious film criticism podcast. You're not a comedian, are you?
Many people have told me that I'm not a comedian.
Okay, that works
but
out.
But professionally, yes. I guess I am.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. I gotta talk to my booker. Stephen Morgan is here. Okay, so this is a serious film criticism podcast, so any comedic tendencies you have, just try to curb them if you would.
Of course, not a problem at all. I'm a big fan of the show. I've listened to many episodes, and I never came with the idea that I was going to bring some sort of comedy. That's not who I am.
Thank you for saying that. You're from Wales. Mm-hmm. I know less about Wales than some of the other parts of that community. I know Scottish people hate the English, and Irish people really hate the English. How do Welsh people feel about the English?
Have you heard this saying, all roads lead to Rome?
I have heard that.
Well, all hate leads to England.
Oh, interesting.
Easy way to think about it. And I don't think that is narrowed down to Wales, Scotland, Ireland. Although proximity means that they particularly hate the English.
Right. They say familiarity breeds contempt.
That is another saying that they say. There is so much wisdom going around.
There's numerous sayings, and they've got them all.
I feel like there are many that we have encountered, and this film actually was a great source of some sayings that I'd never heard before, but the 30s were a different time.
Let's get into the film. You picked out something called The Bastard Butler's Bargain from 1936. This is something I had never heard of.
I'm not surprised. It's one of those films which was such a cult classic where I am from, in Bernardathluch, in South Wales. And yet I somehow had never seen it. Of course, I told people I'd seen it because you want to fit in with your community.
In the United States, we have a thing called Citizen Kane, and everyone's like, oh yeah, it's such a masterpiece. And no one's actually seen it. For all we know, it sucks.
Yeah, so you learn the fact that if you say the word rosebud in a morose voice, the people will just give you that look. Yeah, rosebud, yeah. And that's enough. And with this film, of course, there is the scene where they give the high five, which is the first recorded high five in history. 1936, remember. This is long before.
And you see on their faces, it looks like they've discovered fire. You know, they could tell right away that this was going to take the world by storm. Let's get into the movie. It stars Charles Laughton as the titular butler, portly gentleman who we'll remember from Witness for the Prosecution and the Paradine Case, films like this. Yeah. And Welsh actor Desmond Llewellyn, who would go on to be Q in many of the James Bond movies, but in this, he's a young 22 years old.
And he's still hungry, I feel like this. By the time he had started the Q role, of course, it became a form of typecast. But in this, he was still hungry, he was still young.
He's got a fire behind his eyes. He's a handsome young man, I'll have to say.
I think so. That real square jaw.
He was adorable in the James Bond movies, right? You always love seeing him like a grandfather figure. But as a young man,
Q for cutie, I would say. Sorry.
Yeah, but he was a hottie when he was a little younger. So we meet this character played by Desmond Llewellyn. He's a young Welshman who is making his way in London. Do you know anything about that?
It's so funny you should bring that up, because I was also once a young Welshman making my way in London. And London is, of course, one of those cities that is a thriving city. It's got everything. What's the saying? If you're tired of London, then kill yourself.
I believe that's
the
it.
Details. So I lived there for I think 7 years. 7 years it was. I lived in various parts of London. I was a shoe shine for 3 of those years.
That's Dickensian.
It was, I mean, of course, I was made redundant once they had the electronic shoe cleaners, which became so ubiquitous, and you would find them at each of the stations. But there was a period of time there where I really got to know the people.
Wow.
Really got to connect with them, see them, shine their shoes, polish their shoes, talk to them, get to know them, shine their shoes, polish their shoes, and talk to them, and really get to know them.
So Desmond Llewellyn's character, he's working at kind of a tabloid newspaper as like a social columnist, right?
Yeah.
And they hook him up with a tuxedo and send him to the opera just to hang out in the lobby and try to, rub shoulders with the upper crust. Like he's gonna find some interesting rich people and hear their stories and use them fodder for the society column in this tabloid newspaper. And that's where he runs into a rich baroness Baroness, played by Wendy Hiller, who I like from I Know Where I'm Going, and I think she won the Oscar for Separate Tables, if I'm not mistaken.
Did she? Yes, I've thought all about that. Yeah, what a role though. I mean,
so she's in the lobby smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful shot. You know, you love to see black and white smoke rising from a cigarette in black and white film.
Yeah.
Roger Ebert said, "I don't condone smoking except in movies."
I mean,
and it's wonderful to see.
It's so unpredictable. It's just seeing the smoke rise, and then it sets a character, an idea. It creates so much atmosphere that I just don't think anything else has been able to compare to. I mean, vaping, of course, is of the similar ilk, but
tough to look cool vaping.
Exactly. It just doesn't have that same gravitas.
Desmond Llewellyn's character gets to talking with Wendy Hiller's character, and he's wearing a tuxedo, so she doesn't realize he's poor. She's saying how bored she is with the opera, and he says, "Oh yes, I'm more interested in the statues, because there's like statues in the lobby or whatever." And she says, kind of just being polite, "Oh well, you should come see the statues at my estate sometime." And that's all he needs to hear, right? Desmond Llewellyn's character is thinking, "This is the jackpot. I'm going to hang out at this Baroness's estate. There's sure to be high society people. I'm going to get something for my column."
At this point, we're not really feeling so much sympathy, right? Desmond feels more like a chancer. He's got that real sort of charisma, but at the same time, I don't know. This is not he looks like he's trying to get something for nothing. He's the con artist. He's the likely lad.
That's true, but for me, just being poor in a rich man's world is enough to give me sympathy with the character.
Really, when you put it that way, does feel like something that maybe I've looked at the wrong way.
So he ends up at the Baroness's manor, and it's beautiful.
So many hedgerows.
It's like Downton Abbey times Buckingham Palace plus Balmoral.
The horses have horses. It's incredible. I've never seen something so opulent, but yet so sophisticated.
And there are cool statues. Like, she wasn't lying about that.
Oh my goodness. I mean, the Humpty Dumpty statue.
Yeah.
And what I found was so incredible about that was the fact that they captured the exact moment when the egg shatters. So you don't have the perfect roundness of the egg, egg-shaped of the egg. You don't have the shrapnel, which of course could just any sort of artist could pull together. It has that incredible jaggedness and the cracks that come there.
All kind of centered around the point of impact.
It's that detail which like a commoner like Desmond would never notice himself. But of course, that is the sort of thing which shows that these are really, really rich people.
Mm-hmm. And then you see all the king's horses and all the king's men are gathered round and ready to do their business. Desmond Llewellyn's character is shown in by the titular bastard Butler, played by Charles Laughton, who pretty soon is broaching kind of a touchy subject. He says, "I know there's this expectation around these kind of weekends that one would handsomely tip the butler. I also know that not everyone has the means to tip the and then he kind of like touches the fabric of Desmond Llewellyn's tuxedo, which to me looked like he looked great, but I don't have the eye of a fancy butler.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I thought that part because, of course, you know, there's a lot of detail in these clothing and these outfits that you or I would not pick up on, but it's the fact that the butler is the one who can see through what Desmond is doing and what he's wearing and how it really shows that he's not a rich man.
So what the butler proposes is there's going to be gaming this weekend, gambling. Yeah. And Desmond's, do they like to gamble? Does her baroness-ship like to gamble? She loves it.
She adores it. I like that. Yeah.
And so what the butler says is, you won't have to tip me except to give me 1/3 of your winnings this weekend. And if you win nothing, you owe me nothing. Then there's a little bit of haggling. Desmond's like 1/10, no, 1/6, no. Then they do settle it. It's 1/3 because it would all be on top of what you have now. So it's like
it's true.
All gravy.
I do feel I have to say, because of the fact that you have, I mean, of course, Charles Laughton is such an imposing character, and the way that he makes this offer, you know, feels like Desmond could never refuse under these circumstances.
Right. But because there's also like the implication, if you don't agree, I'm going to expose you as an imposter.
But I also feel like amount of time they spent with the haggling. Perhaps in those days, audiences were a bit more patient. But for me, I did lose some steam, some momentum, I think.
Right. I went to the bathroom, as you'll remember, and
yes,
it was a number 2. So I was in there several minutes, and I came back, and they were still haggling.
Actually, 7 minutes. It was 7 minutes, 34 seconds, if I remember roughly. And then, yes.
Now, were you timing me, or are you some sort of mathematical genius?
Some people have gifts of, some people can ride a horse, some people can just come up with numbers of timing and count in their head while someone is gone.
That's amazing. I'd love to dig into that, but we do have business at hand, and that is to examine the bastard butler's bargain. Desmond Llewellyn comes down. They have a lavish feast of pigeon.
Have you ever tried pigeon? My goodness.
No, I haven't. Is that something that happens a lot in your part of the world?
At the time, of course, pigeons were seen as these beautiful animals that people would
they actually are beautiful. When you look like up close, the shininess and the different colors in their feathers, it is very interesting. Just that they're so ubiquitous.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. They're so ubiquitous because they were bred, because they were so beautiful, and people wanted pigeons, but then they went too far, and now we have too many pigeons, and now they are seen as another one of these sayings that we're talking about, rats with wings, of course. Mm-hmm. I can't remember exactly who said that one.
Probably Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan, that's very him, actually.
But in 1936, a pigeon was seen as a majestic animal, and so a feast of pigeons was decadence to the highest degree.
Status symbol, yeah. The fact is even though it is a terrible bird to eat because it has so little meat on it, that is not the point. It's a status symbol, right? It's making that point, yes. The beauty is like it's the caviar of the time. It's like, oh, look at these little fish eggs that I have spent.
No one's eating caviar because they enjoy it. They're doing it to show off. And then after dinner, they're shown into the parlor where soon they're playing a game of baccarat.
Oh, baccarat.
I don't know if you know anything about this game, but it totally mystified me, and I did not know what anyone was saying. And
is baccarat not popular in the US?
I'm afraid not. No, we play a game called Texas Hold'em.
Similar, some overlap, of course, but a lot less physical.
So they're playing baccarat. There's a big paddle, and Desmond Llewellyn's character basically says, what are the stakes? There's no chips. There's no one's bringing out money. And Wendy Hiller says, this is for rooms. This is for placement in rooms. Like the winner is going to get the best part of the house and the loser is going to be in a closet somewhere.
I have to admit, when he said that, he showed that he didn't understand the rules at that point. The tension at that moment, the look on the others' faces. It's like
have you never been to one of these gaming weekends before?
It's like the TV series Quantum Leap, and Sam Beckett has just jumped into him and now is there and wondering, oh boy, what is happening? It's like that moment where you feel like, oh, you are showing that you do not belong.
Mm-hmm. And so that ends in him getting a fairly good, he didn't wipe the floor with everybody, but he didn't embarrass himself. And he's moving all his luggage and so forth into the room. And the butler pops in. He says, don't forget, 1/3 is mine. And he sets up shop like in one corner of the room. It's like, okay, so he's pretty serious about this. I assumed it was going to be money, but no, it's everything. He gets 1/3 of all the winnings.
Yeah, and of course, when it's just money, that's one thing. But as it goes on, it becomes apparent that there are some of these things that you do not want to split by 3. But I have to say that, and I don't know if you thought this as well, that moment when he came in and said that don't forget felt like very labored. Like we've already had the big long speech, the bartering scene, which took a good 7 minutes or so. Okay. And then here we are again. And I feel like, yes, we understand, Charles, this is what the stakes are. This is what is happening. But maybe of a time when people needed to really sort of make the plot more explicit or something like that. Because to me, the fact that he did that multiple times in the film, it took me out of it.
You got to remember that in those days you would pay for your movie ticket and walk in at any point in the movie. It wouldn't be like today where you got to be in your seat when the movie starts. Hopefully.
That's it.
So they have to repeat some of the key points a few times in some of these movies so you don't miss it.
That's why they kept saying the title of the movie so often as well, right?
Yeah.
Of course. The butler would say, the bastard butler's bargain.
Don't forget the bastard butler's bargain. Yeah, and actually things are coming full circle because as Matt Damon pointed out recently, Netflix wants you to restate the basics of the movie every so often because people are doing laundry or cleaning their dishes while watching these movies.
Time is a circle. Here we are doing the same things that they did did in 1936. But of course, for very different reasons.
So what was the next game they played called?
Then it was Chin Chin.
Now, this was the first time I noticed that the butler was kind of going around peeking at everybody and giving signals to Desmond. And I'm thinking, so he's kind of trying to cheat in his favor because he knows he's going to get a third.
Oh, that's what he was doing. Okay.
We learned the stakes of this one, and because, again, there's no chips, there's no money out, and Desmond says, what are we playing for? Wendy Hiller says 7 minutes in heaven, which is something like we're all familiar with now, but this movie is the origin of that phrase.
And it's really quite telling as well, right? Because it feels like such a modern concept, this idea of calling it 7 minutes of heaven. I mean, your 7 minutes, of course, well, probably a different heaven. But the fact that this phrase comes up in this way alongside the high five that comes up later, this is such an influential film in ways that is so not apparent. If you take it on the surface value, you can easily miss these things. I mean, like you said, with Charles in the background, I never thought that he was actually helping with the game. It's really kind of added another layer to the plot to me. Really cool. Really cool.
It's a well-conceived film. With Charles's help, Desmond is able to win at Chin Chin, and he gets the 7 minutes in heaven. But of course, Charles Laughton takes his 2 1/3 minutes in heaven, which of course is 1/3 of 7. And
that's good maths. But the point, I mean, I have to say, the point when he's about to leave after Charles has said it's my third, and then Charles said, no, you stay. Oh, shivers.
So yeah, Desmond has to stay and watch as Charles has his 2 1/3 minutes in heaven with Wendy Hiller. The next game they played was something called The Thrashing.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Wendy Hiller brings out a bunch of dogs, different kinds of dogs. And it's like first place gets this beagle, second gets
German Shepherd. Yeah.
And so they're playing The Thrashing, and we learned that The Thrashing is basically they take turns spanking each other as hard as they can. And whoever leaves the most extreme...
Yeah, like a welt or a redness, I don't know.
Who's the best spanker? And they will get their first place dog. Desmond's not a great spanker.
Oh my goodness.
He barely leaves a mark on his spanking victim. And so he ends up with one of the worst dogs. It's like a pug or something.
It's like a pug, yeah. But a pug of that era as well. So it still had... the face
snout.
was still more 3D.
Yeah,
it still had a snout, but nonetheless, I mean, there was a reason why that people didn't want them back then. It didn't have the same status, and dogs were all about status in 1936 England.
This is one of the moments that really won me over to Desmond's, where he showed his true heart. Is that Charles comes over with the big knife, and he's like, "It's time for me to take my third on the dog."
Oh my god!
And Desmond just says, you can have the whole thing. He lets him have the whole dog. Which, it still didn't work out for the dog because did you notice the next day they were eating the dog? That's what it was on the table. They were carving up and eating the dog.
Now you mentioned, it was a dog. And they had the leash on the little thing in the center.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's awful. See, this is the thing. This is the subtlety of 1930s cinema. You don't always pick up on these things as you're watching it. Admittedly, this was the point at which I went for the toilet break.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's understandable that I would not have noticed when they started the meal. But, it makes so much more sense now that they ate the dog.
That's the upper crust for you. Now, the next game they played was like nothing I'd ever seen before.
The fact that they don't even say that the previous game has ended. There's no sort of... Everyone knows this so well. Everyone is so well versed in this. And then
this is like the sequence of games like every weekend, basically.
Right.
So everyone knows, and except for Desmond, who's just got a lost look on his face.
Such a ritual to it. And the way that then they all stand, and Desmond, of course, with everything that's happening, he's one step behind. They all stand. He stands as well. He's looking, but just subtly to his left, to his right. Then the butlers take away the table, take away the chairs, and they all slowly walk towards the center. It's got a real Wicker Man feeling to it, this real kind of cult feeling. They sit down cross-legged upon the floor, which at the time was very faux pas. And then the next game begins, which of course we later learn is called, I think it's a Verre de Vérité.
Verre de Vérité.
Verre de Vérité. Which, I mean, I don't speak French at all. I have no idea.
Do you want me to Google it?
If you could, actually. I never thought of doing that.
Verre de Vérité.
Verre de Vérité is a glass of truth.
That makes sense.
Now, the glass in question is like a champagne bottle, emptied out.
So they're completely empty. cork is gone. Fun, you would think, would be over. But no. In the center of the circle, it is slowly placed. And then, I don't know how they chose who was first, but again, no one speaks. I can't remember the actor's name. I think it was Winston Berryson. He's the one who reaches in, making small eye contact with everyone, puts his hand on the bottle,
right,
and then sort of applies a force to sort of almost spin the bottle.
Right, but it does. It's like the bottle spins around, but it's still staying in the center of the circle.
Exactly. It's like it moves, but it doesn't. It's magical. And then it stops. The spout is pointing directly at Desmond.
And I'm thinking, does this bode well? Does this bode ill? What could this mean?
Exactly. Like at that point, you just feel like when you don't know what is going on, that you would just want to be able to blend in the background, to learn what the rules of the game are before it. But of course, Desmond now is the focal point of the first moment of this game.
And then what Winston does is he kind of crawls on all fours over to Desmond, puts one hand around the back of his neck and pulls him in and open mouth kisses him.
Which for the 1930s was a big deal. Tongues.
And then they kind of take turns. Each person's, I don't know what you'd call it, manually rotates the bottle.
Yeah, like a centrifuge.
Yeah, and there's a lot of kissing going on, and they don't mention any stakes. So I think the point of the game is just the open mouth kissing.
But of course, there is the moment when Winston is kissing Desmond, and Charles comes over.
Yeah, comes on and is like, "Let me get in on this." And
the way that they kind of combine as a three was a little sort of.
I thought that was cool.
It feels.
How'd they get the camera in that close?
Right, because of course in those eras, it's not like they could have a GoPro or something like this. There was no way to have a small camera, but they had a pretty good angle. I feel like that's one of those ones where they just have like a physical trickery. I'd love to know exactly how they had that really good angle to see all of the simultaneously the insides, the outsides of the mouths, and the eyeballs.
Now the next game, the stakes are higher than ever. Wendy Hiller says, "This is for the fortune." And basically you have to go, like your entire fortune is at stake. And Desmond, of course, doesn't want anyone to discover he has no fortune whatsoever. But the game they're playing, she says, is called The Comparison.
The Comparison.
And there's a small room off of the gaming room. Two men go in. One comes out kind of doing up his pants and shaking his head.
Yeah.
Same thing happens. It's always men going in. And we don't know what's going on in there. But then finally it's Desmond's turn. He goes in and the gentleman in there says, "All right, drop trowel."
Drop trowel.
Oh, this is the comparison they're talking about. They're comparing what they're working with. And whoever has the larger one wins until it's narrowed down to the largest of all. I don't know how Wendy Hiller factors into this game, really. She's just a facilitator, I guess. Desmond does drop trowel. And something unsettles the man who's looking, and he said,
"Of course,
where? What? Where are the jewels?" And then they do a close up on his member, and it's jewel encrusted. And so, we realize all English rich people have jewel encrusted genitalia.
I think that carried on until the 1970s when it started to lose fashion. But it was especially for aristocracy, and it was something which it was a strange custom as well because of the fact that most people would never actually be able to see it, of course. But like with so much of like old money, sort of the way that people would show the sophistication, it's not about the fact that you're trying to show it in the moment. It's about the fact that as someone who is of an upper class, that you have that bejeweled genitalia.
So they've discovered basically Desmond doesn't have any jewels, and the guy in fact goes running from the room. He says, "He doesn't have any jewels. He doesn't have any jewels."
And you feel so sorry for Desmond at this point, because not just for the fact that he hasn't seen these jewels, but I think it's quite a tender moment when, like as I'm sure you know, like when you compare sizes like this with someone else, like a friend or even a stranger, that it's a very intimate moment. And so to have someone then to just run out and shout about the jewels, that's not only of course the imminent danger that he's in, but it's also quite a sort of an embarrassing, sad moment, I think, for Desmond in general. I really feel for the guy in that
He's
moment.
Metaphorically and literally caught with his pants down. And then Wendy Hiller basically says, "Seize him! He's not one of us! He's not rich enough to know the secrets of the upper crust." And so he's trying to escape, but his pants are, and he's like kind of waddling, like penguin-esque. And then Charles Lawton is trying to grab him and stuff. It's a little bit like a Scooby-Doo chase scene where they're kind of dashing between rooms.
This felt very much, it was like the moment we feel like, oh, this is definitely a film from the 1930s. That point when, of course, the two of them come out of the same door and look at each other.
And they go the other way. Good stuff.
Yeah.
But eventually he does capture Desmond Llewellyn, and she says, take him to the statuing room.
Or was it just me, or was it like so creepy, like how Wendy at this point, because she's been such a placid character throughout, and then suddenly, all this voice that comes out of her is just like, oh my God, I did not see that coming, for her to be the one who really turns the screws on,
Now they take him down to a place they call the statuing room, where they have kind of a vat of, I don't know if it's metal or what. How do you make some? They're creating statues basically, or encasing people inside of statues.
I guess statues usually, because this confused me too. Like a statue would usually be sort of marble, I guess, or some sort.
I'm
sort
of
actually
rock.
Sure, right? Because the implication, and this is quite a twist, quite a realization that there are actual people inside of these statues.
Right, all the king's horses and all the king's men. And Humpty Dumpty maybe even was a person at one point. They're turning Desmond into a statue, and they start with his legs, and they dip him in this scary vat, and his legs are turning either to stone or something, or they're being encased. Yeah. He's like, oh, you invited me here, and I'm a columnist for the social, but I'm not going to write about any of this. No one will ever know.
The way he talks about his background as well, because I thought this was kind of an interesting class twist, is that he's saying, he's kind of like, when I was just a boy, and my parents said to me just one thing. They said, whatever you do in life, just make sure you keep moving, because you don't let the past catch up with you. And it was this really impassioned speech, I felt, and it didn't quite make sense to me completely, but the fact that he's had such a passion behind it, and I felt like the tying in of like, do you keep moving? Now I sort of say it out loud, I realize it probably did tie in with the statues themselves, right? Because
they can't keep moving.
They can't keep moving. So yeah, the way he says it though, and the conviction, I think it was the first moment in the film we really sort of see the human behind this ragtag whippersnapper that's causing trouble.
It's a marvelous performance, and you can see why Cubby Broccoli wanted to cast him in the James Bond franchise for so many years.
Absolutely.
He's got
I mean, honestly, I think if you took that speech, put it into another film, I don't know, like Avatar, and just there, and like that would win an Oscar.
Sure.
That would be Best Actor, hands down. You just powerful.
Towards the end, he starts to mention about, the things that he had agreed with the butler. He brings up the bastard butler's bargain,
Yes.
Let him keep the dog and everything. And Wendy Hill says, what's this? You knew? Yeah. And her anger kind of turns away from Desmond and onto Charles, the butler. It's like, you knew he wasn't one of us and you let him stay. What she does, she goes and grabs the big wooden wheel and like real quick pulls Desmond out of the vat that's turning him into a statue. And so his legs are statue legs. And then she shoves Charles in bodily. So his whole body, and he's like, oh dear.
Yeah. But I got to say, one thing that really took me out of the moment here was I felt like now he's in the vat, to have him once again explain the premise of the film and say the title at this point just felt a bit much, right? Because I think if you don't know the film premise and title by this point, then you're not really going to pick up on it. So he's there in the liquid and he's saying, 1/3 of the winnings I would take away from Desmond, who is in the fake tuxedo.
That was the bastard butler's bargain, not me turning into a statue. Yeah, so in that sense you're right. But then there's like a cut and it's like a time jump. And you see the statue version of Charles Lawton, and now he's one of the king's men who's trying to put Humpty back together again. And then what you see is kind of a wheelchair going, and it's Desmond Llewellyn on a wheelchair because he can't move his legs anymore. Yeah. He's coming out with some sort of smoothie or something with a long straw, and he sticks it in the different statue, the Charles Lawton statue, and then he goes to the next one. And you realize, these people are still being kept alive. They're just encased in statues.
Which is such a terrifying concept, right?
But also, Desmond Llewellyn, now works for Wendy Hill. That's not a great way to end up either. Like he it's not like he really won.
It was interesting because I liked the way that they didn't even explicitly show this bit, because the fact is, you know, in that moment, what do you do with Desmond? Whilst he is not the one that Wendy has the wrath against, that has been Charles, is established, he does now know everything.
So she can't really let him go.
So it's interesting. You wonder, you know, what has led to this particular arrangement, but you feel actually this is probably the best scenario for Desmond at this point.
The movie left me wanting to have that kind of a game night, you know? Like maybe, like if I learned the rules to Chin Chin and Baccarat, I could recreate this whole evening. It'd be fun.
Well, that's it. You know, of course, we haven't explicitly mentioned that moment when Desmond is in the chair and he gives the high five to Wendy.
That was cool.
That happens. In many ways, I suppose it's strange that it was so pivotal and influential, because, you know, it doesn't really add so much.
So that's the Bastard Butler's Bargain. Thank you so much for picking that out. I enjoyed watching it. Did you did it ring true as a Welshman who spent time in England?
It was, I mean, it feels like it had that sort of class system, right? That is such a big thing in the UK, and it's such a you know, it's built in, it's not spoken, it's lots of different cultures have their own sort of like different things that people arbitrarily distinguish them by. But to me, this was like such a great representation of these pointless and these arbitrary things which people end up losing their lives over for essentially nothing.
Well put. To end the show, I like to do plugs and shout outs. So basically anything you want to promote, please do so. And anything you'd like to shout out, like a celebrate, like give a little mention to, you can do that. For example, I'd like to shout out the casually racist variety writer, Rebecca Rubin. She got a lot of heat last April for minimizing the box office success of Sinners. She said that even though it made $61 million in one weekend, it was still far away from becoming profitable, even though that was a point she'd never made about any similarly budgeted movies made by white filmmakers. Now, Sinners ended up with over $368 million, so it was profitable many times over. And I think Rebecca Rubin is being a little more careful with what she says these days. But I wanted to shout her out because she created a pretty good bit. Like Sinners was just like nominated for 16 Oscars. So it's like, you know, Sinners was nominated for 16 Oscars, which
16
might sound like a lot, but, you know, hundreds of people worked on that movie. So percentage-wise, it's not actually very good.
But yeah, I guess so. That's true.
Now, Stephen, do you have anything you want to plug or shout out?
Yeah, I want to shout out the vast majority and incredible political gains and wins that the Labour Party had in the UK in the previous elections, and have squandered it all with a lack of vision or anything that can actually get behind the left-wing powerhouse that they should have been at that point, and have just turned an entire nation into a point where now they are considering a far-right party that didn't even exist before, who are just so chaotically clownish that it feels like an inevitability for 3 years from now. So shout out to Keir Starmer and the rest of the Labour Party for managing to create a sort of a vacuum of any sort of influence that now is going to have a detrimental effect on perhaps an entire nation and generation in years to come.
You know, we know something about that in the US. Does it make you happy to have gotten out of the UK?
Yeah. It's been of course the US now are doing a speed run on the chaos, but I do feel like the UK are just kind of like they so often look over to the US and go like, oh, that seems terrible, maybe we'll copy that in some years time and see how that works out for us.
Where can people find you if they want to learn more about your stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on various internet sites, there's so many social media sites as well, as, you know, who knew, the Instagrams and the YouTubes and everything. And I'm regularly performing here in the Netherlands, which hopefully some of your listeners or the other people will, well, majority, North Hollywood, it's not so far, you know, it's just like a 18 hour flight or something. It's not a problem at all. But I mean, I'm performing semi-regularly. I recently became a dad, so...
congratulations, me too.
Thank you.
How old is your kid?
Congratulations. 4 months.
4 months?
Almost 5 now.
Wow, I have a 2-year-old. So, but you're like really in it.
Yeah, exactly. So things have been a little bit slower at the moment, but it's starting to get to the point where it's the normality is coming back. But it's, as you know, if you're 2 years, then it's a pretty intense period.
It is, yes. Well, congratulations. That's great. I didn't know that. All right, Stephen, I can't thank you enough for making that 16-hour flight and coming all the way to North Hollywood to rent one tape with me. I really appreciate it.
It was worth every penny.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Forgotten Video Store, and special thanks to another Welshman, Roald Dahl, whose short story Neck inspired this episode's movie. Also, shout out to Slate writer Sam Adams for one-upping my Sinners joke, apparently without irony. Even though Sinners won 4 Oscars, including wins for the great Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan, Mr. Adams felt the need to write an article about how Sinners actually set the record for most Oscars losses in the history of the awards. It's a fucking awesome movie. Stop trying to diminish it. Hey, Sam Adams, stick to making beer. Tell every goddamn person in your contact list about this podcast, and don't forget to follow the show on your podcast app, because next week I'm reuniting with one of my favorite guests for an episode about a dystopian movie set in the rudest city in the history of civilization. Forgotten Video Store is a slop-free zone. We never use any AI for any part of the production of this podcast, not even the hastily photoshopped episode art. More than Ben Affleck can say. The music in this episode is Funky Energy Loop by Kevin MacLeod, Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. Okay, bye!